So here's what happened. I went to visit somebody in a rehab center as part of my work. And I went to the front desk, as I would in the US, and I said I would like to visit Trudy Vandermeulen. And the woman at the front desk looked puzzled and said, I don't, in English, I don't think we have a Trudy Vandermeulen here. And she said, oh, but we do have a Trudy Vandermeulen. And I said, but that's what I said. And then, and she said, no, you didn't. But then she gave me the directions to the room, and I had a visit.
Welcome to the Where Have You Been podcast. I'm your host, Bill Ream, and each week on the pod, I have conversations with incredible guests from all walks of life. Expect to hear funny, crazy, emotional, life-changing, and even sometimes life-threatening stories and experiences that will entertain and inspire you. As always, I appreciate your likes, subscriptions, ratings, and reviews wherever you are listening. It doesn't sound like much, but it truly helps the pod get to the ears of more people who may enjoy it. And check out the website, whybpodcast.com, for links to the socials where you can find pictures from the guests and their stories, and also buy merch if you're so inclined. Now let's get to this week's episode. Thank you for being here. It's another episode of the Where Have You Been podcast, and I'm your host, Bill Ream. And today, would you believe it, that we might have another author on our show today? Among other things, he is not just an author. We're not going to define him that way. But I have Doug on the show, and I'm going to let Doug introduce himself to everybody. If you don't mind, Doug, would you tell the listeners, who are you?
Hey, Bill, it's good to be with you again. We've had some issues getting to this place. Thunderstorms got in the way. So good to be with you finally. I've been a Presbyterian pastor for most of my life, but I grew up in Michigan and have lived in several places in the U.S. And then I even served churches in a couple of different countries in Europe. So I think I've been around.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And so you're in Michigan now.
So I came home in retirement, and I think ultimately, this is a little early in the conversation, but I think that a lot of travel and a lot of adventure seeking is actually a search for home. And coming to that realization, I moved back here.
That's a really interesting statement, actually. And I can see that. I mean, you're right. I mean, in a way, that makes sense. I've never thought of it that way.
The curious thing is I've changed a lot in 4 decades, and the place where I grew up has changed. So we're getting to know each other again.
Yeah, that's really cool, actually. That's really cool. So you have, I'm sure there's enough familiarity, but also you get to sort of explore some newness. So that's cool.
You know, if Joseph Campbell, Hero's Journey, if you've done any reading there, the whole idea for the hero is to return home a changed person. And I find I don't think of myself as a hero, but I find meaning in that story.
Yeah, that's very cool. And so before we get too far in, I like to do this early because I know that a lot of listeners, you're commuting or whatever, and maybe you don't come back and listen to the end of the episode. I don't hold it against anyone, but I also want people to know where to find you. So where you have a website, you've got socials, if you don't mind putting that out there for the listeners.
Sure. Like millions of other people, I have a Substack newsletter, and I have the very imaginative name Doug's Blog, or Doug, actually, it's Doug Substack now. And easy to find there. I think all you have to do is Google my name as well, and you can find out more about me than you ever wanted to know.
And you have, I guess, you have a website too, right?
Well, the Substack functions that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you have socials at all?
I wish I could say no, but I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, LinkedIn. Yeah, I'm there.
Another case of just search for your name.
Yes, hard to get
as Douglas probably, or
Douglas Brouwer. Hard to get a book published these days unless you have a social media platform, and
yeah,
so there I am.
Necessary evil.
Yep.
And we could also be adding doctor in front of your name, correct?
Yeah, I did return to school for another academic degree. I'm not. I'm no longer sure why. It's like my first one wasn't enough, but yes, Doc. Please call me Doug.
I will, only because that's what you called yourself to me, and so that's what I figured you cared to be called. So,
Yeah,
but
thanks.
okay, so let's step into travel a little bit. As far as, when did travel become a thing for you? Did your parents travel with you when you were a kid? Was it something that just developed over time? How did that happen for you?
I'll give you two issues to think about here. My grandparents were immigrants from the Netherlands, and whenever I went to my grandmother's house, I would see Vermeer wall prints and Delft tea sets, and she would speak Dutch on the telephone to her friends. So right away, as a toddler, I realized that the world was bigger than what I knew. And then my parents used to take my sisters and me on 3 week road trips every summer all over North America. And it wasn't until, well, actually, until I started reflecting, doing the reflection leading to the book, that I realized my parents gave me the gift of curiosity. So
Okay.
I think my dad, in particular, just wanted so badly to understand the world around him. And I inherited that trait, which I'm pleased about.
Yeah, that's really incredible, and that's great when you can get that at a younger age, because my curiosity for the world around me was very limited. Just
Uh,
no fault of anyone. That's just not how my parents were, and so that developed for me much later in life, and I'm a little upset about that, because a lot of time lost where I could have been exploring more. But hey, it happened eventually, and now I have this love and passion for travel and learning. So
yeah, I sense that you do.
yeah. So when did you start really traveling, I guess, on your own then?
uh, it, I'm going to tell this story, and you're going to think I'm a product of privilege, and it's not really true. When I graduated from high school, my parents said, "What do you want for a graduation gift?" And I think they were hoping I would say an electric typewriter so I could type term papers. And instead, I said, "I want to go to Europe." And I mean, if my children had said that to me, I would have said, "Well, nice, good try." But my parents made it possible. They took my younger sister and me. My older sister was out of the house by that point. They took my younger sister and me on a 3 week tour of European capitals. And
Wow.
yeah, my first passport arrived at age 17. And we did not live in a big house. We live relatively modestly. I'm not going to overstate the case. My dad, it's, my in my dad's value system, travel ranked above cars and homes, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's why we were able to do it, and it was amazing. But then I got married, and I mean, this is after after college.
Yeah.
Got married, raised children, and there's a gap there where I didn't do very much traveling at all, except to get away and sit on a beach and read a book,
Yeah.
because that's what happens when children are young. But at some point, I think this was in my late 30s, it just exploded. Desire to my desire to see the world just exploded.
Yeah. Yeah. And it seems like you sort of listened to that desire. So on that note, I think this is the perfect place in the podcast to, and I tell every guest the same thing. You do not have to list every place. I find that most people do like to list at least a number of at least areas, but you do you, however you'd like to do this. Doug, where have you been?
Good one. I have to say, I have not done much traveling in Asia. So
Okay.
right up front, I'll acknowledge that that's a weak spot on my resume, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I've traveled a great deal in Europe, have lived there on 3 separate occasions working. I have been to Africa, but not the interior of Africa. I've been to 3 countries on 3 different corners.
Wow. Okay.
So, and South America a little, but my primary travel destination has been Europe.
Okay. And all over the U.S. or limited U.S.?
Because of those childhood road trips, I've been to
Yeah.
every state in the United States, every province in Canada, yes, all
Oh
over
my
North
gosh.
America.
That's incredible. Have you gotten to, is that just continental or have you gotten to Alaska and Hawaii also?
Amazingly, I have not been to either Alaska and Hawaii, and I very much want to go to both.
Yeah. What about Puerto Rico? Last one.
Oh, no, no,
No?
interesting.
Okay. Highly recommend. But so you tell me where you'd like to start. Did you come thinking like if you and I were sitting down at a bar having a cocktail and just we found out that we both really enjoyed travel, what's the first story you would tell me of your travels anywhere in the world?
Well, this would be a terrible bar conversation, but I'll tell you anyway. I was 38 years old, and a member of my church came to me and said, "Doug, it's time to take a trip." And I had no idea what he was thinking about, but he wanted me to take a group of church members to Israel, the Holy Land. And I think that was my first, aside from that 17-year-old trip to Europe, that was my first big trip. And I took 33 people
Wow.
to Israel, and we just had an amazing time. It was all new to me. I've been back several times, but at that point, it was all new to me. And then we had such a good time that the same people said, "Hey, where are we going next?" And I said, "Well, what about Greece and Turkey?" So, biblically speaking, this would be where the Apostle Paul traveled. But that was our excuse for going.
Good
And
excuse.
then again, this I must be a good tour host because when we got back, they were already thinking about the next one, and so we
Wow.
went to Scotland. We called that the roots of the Reformation. I'm not going to go into the history there, but there was a reason. And then I can't resist telling this funny story.
Please.
They
This
still
is what
wanted
we're
to
all
go.
about.
Okay, they still wanted to go places, and they said, "Hey, how about islands named after saints?" We to keep the religious dimension up. But so that was the start.
Yeah. Do you remember any instances, anything during the any of those trips that you took with those large groups? First of all, did you do all the planning?
No, I worked with
Okay.
a tour company, and
Okay.
I went back. I can't resist telling this story. I went back to the founder of that tour company and asked him to write a cover blurb or endorsement for my book. And so I was able to reconnect with this old friend.
Oh, cool.
But he helped me out immensely on those early trips.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Especially if you hadn't been, out of the country in a long time, and that was your like one of your first real big trips since your teen years. But anything that jumps out at you that were just really fun or really really incredible, maybe even spiritual moments that stand out during any of those travels? Because again, it's a church group, and you're doing this, you know, especially Israel. I mean, I've heard some really incredible things about Israel.
Yeah, where to start? But I'll tell you one story. I'm a big proponent of meeting people, encountering cultures. I wanted
I
to call
love
the
it.
book "Get Off the Bus."
I love it.
My publisher didn't like that as much as I did, but very early on that first trip to Israel, we drove north into the Galilee region of Israel, and we met a Palestinian Christian. And I had never met him before, but I read his book before we went there. And this man has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize 3 times. He is a known peacemaker in the region.
Wow.
He tries to bring Christians and Muslims and Jews together at his school. So we took the bus to see him, and I have to say, it was a life changing. For me, I had never met anyone quite like him. And then, of course, there have been other people along the way, but that that first experience, I have to say, was life changing.
Yeah. Was that mostly was it what was it about him? Like his just the way he carried himself, his aura, if that's a proper thing, or
Yeah,
just just overall who he was.
I don't know what you would expect to find when you meet a pacifist. I hear pacifist and I think of a meek and gentle
Yeah, yeah.
person. Well, this man is as strong as they come. he will stand up to anyone.
Wow.
And he stood up for his school, and he stood up for his students. He took, well, he didn't take anything from the Israeli government. He demanded whatever their rights were, or the funding. I had never met anybody quite like that.
Inspiring.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, that's very cool. I have to mention this because so we found each other on a site called Podmatch. It's a site that matches guests and hosts. And you have in your About section on there a few sentences that I really, really, really appreciated when I read it. You said, to be clear, sometimes a vacation is just a vacation, and that's okay. We all need a break from work from time to time. And you were talking about your book. You said, my book, however, reflects on the kind of travel in which we set out to learn about our world and, importantly, ourselves. And I have been saying this from the beginning of the podcast since its inception, that I don't think enough people think about the difference between a vacation and travel. And people think that a vacation is travel. And I don't know the actual definitions from the dictionary or anything like that. But in my mind, travel is different than a vacation. Do you feel the same way?
Yes. Since the book was published, I don't know, not quite 3 months ago, I've been talking to various groups. And I usually begin with a joke, and it gets a laugh every time. And the joke is, some of you are going to go home tonight and think, I would never go on a vacation with that guy. And the funny part of that is, I know, and I've experienced the need for just getting away, sitting on a beach, reading a book, toes in the sand. I fully understand that and appreciate it. On the other hand, sometimes, not every time, but sometimes travel, if we enter into it with an open spirit, a humble attitude, sometimes travel can be life-changing. So that's what I have in mind. I'm a big proponent of both.
Yes.
But what I want to write about are those other times when, oh my goodness, I'm not going to be the same as a result of having done this.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think it sounds like for you that you were sort of like that from the very beginning. And that must have been from your dad, right?
I guess. My dad has passed away now, but in going through all of his photographs, and he took, oh my goodness, so many slides over the years, he never took a family portrait, say, at the Grand Canyon.
Mm-hmm.
And at first I was startled by that. And then I realized that in his mind, we're not here to announce to the world that we were here.
Mm-hmm.
We're here to discover and explore and remember, and in at my age, I think that was such a gift.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure that it was. Absolutely. So you talk about how, and again, I feel like this is a different, so we're kind of doing this a little bit differently today than I usually do, because I usually just talk all about stories, and we'll get into plenty of them, I'm sure. But you say, and let's do that now, actually. You say that when you travel, you're about, the learning and the experience. And you said you've had so many like life-changing experiences. You had the one in Israel. Are there any others that you can think of off the top of your head that stand out?
Well, I'll give you a very recent one. Winters in Michigan are just terrible, and I think the most recent winter here was even worse than usual. So my wife and I went south for some sunshine and warm temperatures, and we ended up on an island called Defusky Island off the coast of South Carolina.
Okay.
And again, the idea there was simply to escape the winter.
Mm-hmm.
But Bill, I can't help myself. I had to, as soon as we got there, I had to know everything about this island. Where I found that there was a plantation, which is now a golf course and country club. But there's a large African American population there, and they are descendants from the enslaved people who used to live there.
Wow.
So from the first day, I found myself reading the history of this island. And then just in case some of your listeners are curious, Pat Conroy, novelist, set all of his stories on this island. He gave it a different name, but that's where he lived, and he wrote about that experience. I, I mean, the reason I tell that story is I'm now in a place in my life where I can't help myself. I want to know when I go somewhere. I want to know all about it.
Yeah, I find myself, unfortunately, um, my wife would always do most of the planning, and so we would go places, and I wouldn't know exactly what was happening, where we were or whatever. But once I was there, so many times things just jumped out to me or interested me so much. We did a lot of churches, a lot of the a lot of really ancient buildings and things that once I realized the history that there was in some of these places, I'm the guy that does it after. So
Hmm.
once I get back home, I'm like, okay, now I have to read everything about what I just saw.
Yeah, yeah. Good for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I do, and I buy the books. When I'm there, and if they're selling books or something, I'm the guy that buys all that stuff and brings it all home. Yeah, so
Yeah, because you can't turn it off. I mean, once you've been to a place, it has made an impression on you, and good for you for wanting to go deeper.
yeah.
Has it ever led you to go back to the same place?
So there's very few places that I have been back to more than once. I am more of the mindset that I'm getting older and there's so much more of the world that I haven't been to. And I'm jealous. You've been to so much more of the planet than I have, and but that's just circumstance. It's but yeah, there's so much more I want to see. There are places that I definitely want to go back, but mostly after the fact it's more of just learning, online or reading books.
Yeah,
So,
good.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm so pleased to hear that.
Yeah. So let's go back. Can we go back to Europe because you've spent so much time there even since your 17-year-old trip, right?
You're right.
So favorite places in Europe, and tell me some of your favorite experiences. I know it's going to be difficult, but hopefully the experiences aren't difficult, but to choose places may.
I can't think of a single place uh, where I had a bad experience. I would go back to any number of places. I've spent a lot of time in Italy. I had a sabbatical one summer, a 3 month getaway, and so my wife and I took our teenage daughters there, and I think we explored every square inch, and I just think Italy is amazing.
Yeah,
But then
me
I've
too.
also lived twice in Switzerland. I've been employed there twice, and I was required to learn the language. So
Wow.
I have a deep connection there. Yes, for my work permit, I was required to learn
How much do you
German, which
remember?
nobody speaks.
How much do you remember of that?
Well, I'm not sure I could pass the exam right now, but I've kept it up a little bit.
That's good.
And there's nothing to dislike about Switzerland except for the high prices. The the views are incredible in every direction. I mean, whatever you heard is true, but it is a very expensive country to live in, and some people avoid traveling there for that reason.
Do you
And
remember any
then,
specific like stories with your family? Anything that was funny or even a little dramatic, or anything that happened while you were in Switzerland? Nobody really talks about Switzerland, so
no, it's not a funny country. The people are very hard workers, and if you don't know that before you go there, they'll be glad to tell you. On the other hand, once 5 o'clock comes around, they are gone, and they don't answer emails after work. Holidays are extremely important to them. So, on the one hand, they're very hard workers. On the other hand, they take their time off very seriously, and they think about it as family time. They're very family oriented. I can Okay, here's the only funny story I can think of. In every church that I've ever been a part of, I've started a men's group, but usually it's to read a book and talk about it together. But if you're in Switzerland, sitting in a room and discussing a book doesn't seem like the right way to appreciate that country. Every Saturday morning, we went for a hike, and there's always a trail or a mountain. There's always somewhere to go, and I usually had 12 to 15 guys who wanted to walk somewhere on Saturday morning. It was amazing, just unbelievably beautiful.
wow. Yeah, that's very cool. So I'm looking for from you some specific stories, things
Yeah.
we went to this place and this happened and this was, this was this or this was that. But it can, you were going to go somewhere after Switzerland, I think, when you were talking. And I interrupted you, and I'm sorry for that.
No, I didn't hear it as interruption. Well, I'll tell you this story about the Netherlands. The last work contract was in The Hague, and since I'm Dutch, or at least since my grandparents were Dutch, I figured, well, I'm going to fit right in.
Okay.
Just because of my last name, not because I knew the language.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I had been there briefly when I was 17. So here's what happened. I went to visit somebody in a rehab center as part of my work, and I went to the front desk, as I would in the U.S., and I said I would like to visit Trudy Vandermeulen. And the woman at the front desk looked puzzled and said, I don't, in English, I don't think we have a Trudy Vandermeulen here. And she said, oh, but we do have a Trudy Vandermeulen. And I said, but that's what I said. And she said, no, you didn't. But then she gave me the directions to the room, and I had a visit. But what I learned in the year or so that I lived there was that I'm not as Dutch. I'm an American. I mean, let's just face it. I am an American through and through who happens to have a Dutch last name. I don't speak the language very well. I thought I knew last names, but apparently I don't. And so, okay. And here's another wrinkle. Members of the church I served came from places like Indonesia and Suriname in South America and South Africa. These were people who did not look Dutch to me. Their skin tones were very different from mine. And yet, I discovered that they were native Dutch speakers. They lived in these colonial countries that had once been colonies of the Netherlands. I have to say that was one of the most, it's not funny.
Yeah, Bill, no, sorry. It doesn't have to be.
That's okay. It was one of the most striking lessons I learned there about what does it mean to be Dutch? And I guess if some of your listeners are from other countries, if they're Italian or Polish or whatever, you could ask yourself, what does it really mean to claim this ethnic identity? And what I learned was it means very little right now. I have a Dutch last name. I have some genetic inheritance from ancestors there, but I'm thoroughly American, and it stood out for me when I was there.
Yeah, that was when you said the woman's name. That was fantastic.
Yeah.
And I'm not always looking for funny necessarily, but sometimes those are the easiest stories to recall. Sometimes were things that just made you laugh in the moment, or now looking back, you think, oh my gosh, that was so funny when that happened to us. But and actually, what I found a lot of times with, now that I've gotten into this for much longer, the podcast itself, I mean, I've had guests that the more, I don't want to say traumatic necessarily, but the negative stories a lot of times are sometimes what stands out to them when they're hearkening back in their memories, because maybe they were even, not traumatizing necessarily, but this flight was delayed and then this happened, but then I met this person and but yeah, so, but whatever stands out for you anywhere you've been, though, I mean, I'm just looking for whatever has happened to you. That's all. So.
Yeah, well, I think maybe you'll appreciate this one. The people we knew in Zurich, that's where we lived for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
The people in Zurich were very proud of the fact that they did not have air conditioning, but I mean, summers could be quite warm there. And in the evening, people would walk down to Lake Zurich and go for a swim. But here's the thing. They walked down to the lake and then proceeded to undress at the side of the lake.
Completely.
Yeah, which is not something.
Yeah,
something Americans would do, and I have to say, there's a whole different. This is not news. I'm sure you've heard this before, but there's a whole different approach to nudity in Europe than there is to the U.S.
Yeah, but you were not expecting that.
No, and I didn't join in either. I'm an American, and I'm modest. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. So let's continue through Europe for a little bit, because you mentioned Italy briefly, I believe, but
Yes.
where else? Where? How much of Italy have you explored?
Uh, when I went with my family, we rented a house or an apartment for a week at a time. So we would go and settle in, and then take daily excursions from that home. So we were
That's
in
excellent.
Tuscany. We saw Cinque Terre, that's in the northeast
Mm.
part of the country. Then we went down to Naples and explored the Isle of Capri. I'm trying to Pompeii, where the earthquake was.
See this, and I'm interrupting you again. This
Yeah,
is what I love about Italy specifically. I've been twice, and I've been to a handful of places. The only one we have in common to this point, which I'm sure you have more, but to this point, from what you've stated, was Naples, and I was only there for just a day trip. So
yeah.
yeah, but continue. I'm sorry.
I do have a funny story about Naples. Would you like to hear this
I would love to
one?
hear every story you have, Doug.
Okay. We went to Pompeii and Herculaneum, which are ruins from the earthquake that occurred there, and it's very well preserved. They dug it up, and it's amazing what's still there. But we also saw signs that some of the relics or artifacts were taken to the museum in Naples, and we thought, well, okay, let's drive over to the museum in Naples and see these artifacts. And the museum was wonderful, but then there was a separate exhibit, and to get our daughters into the exhibit, we had to sign a release, and our Italian is not very good, as you can imagine. And so we go into this separate exhibit, and my goodness, it became clear right away that this was where the pornography was, the Roman erotica.
Oh my gosh.
And we had no idea that we were taking our teenage daughters. I mean, we signed the release. I learned a lot by going in there, and I'm guessing my daughters did too. But what an awkward moment.
Was there eye shielding? Did you have to?
So
uh,
I think the Romans had a much freer idea of sexuality than 21st century Americans.
yeah, I would tend to agree. Oh my gosh, that's funny. So continue. Where else? Where else in Italy have you been?
So and then the last portion of the trip was in Venice, which I have to say my teenage daughters didn't like as much. I think if
Mm.
they had been there with a significant other, they would have found it a romantic time. My daughters didn't like Venice at all, and so we ended up cutting that short. I think it is a couple's. I think it might be more of a couple's destination. I'll just say that it has a romantic feeling about it. Although,
Hmm.
like you, I've done some reading afterward, and then discovered that there aren't that many native Venetians left anymore. The city is a tourist destination,
Yeah,
which is very sad.
yeah. I loved Venice very, very, very much, and we actually stayed on a small, separate island off of the 116 islands that Venice is made of. But it was just, I thought it was wonderful, and I was not in a relationship at that time, so it was, but it
Too
was
bad.
beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. Did you enjoy Venice?
Yeah, very much. Until, as I said, until I did some reading later and realized that this is one of those over
Yeah.
touristed European cities. It's like Barcelona, Bruges in Belgium. There may be
Mm.
one or two others. Amsterdam, I guess. It they're it's a shame to see them in the summertime. They're just overrun with
Hmm.
tourists, often cruise passengers. 1,000 cruise passengers will get off their boat and wander the central city area. Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. It's the ugly side of tourism.
Well, let me ask you this question then. That triggers something for me. What are the places that you've been that are really, at least as we would like Google a place to try to go to for a vacation or for travel? What are some places you've been to that are not tourist destinations that you just loved?
Well, yeah, I want to say Morocco, although I think I've read somewhere that Morocco makes $6 billion a year on tourism, and yet it's not quite like Barcelona or Venice. And my wife and I spent almost a month there, in February a few years ago and went to a number of cities. It's a remarkable country because there are snow-capped mountains, there are sandy beaches, and there's the Sahara Desert. So
Wow.
in one small country, there's this geographical variety, and then the cities are architecturally fascinating. I have to say that Morocco is one of the most fascinating countries I've ever been to.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, and it's not that big, right?
No, and it's been conquered so many times and ruled by a variety of civilizations. I think that France and Spain did not leave it alone until the 1950s. So it's only had its independence from foreign rule since the 1950s.
But that also means that culturally it's very unique and diverse and maybe blended
Yeah.
today.
So I, I think it's a majority Muslim country. I mean, that's undeniable, but they pride themselves on interfaith dialogue. And no other Muslim country I know of, maybe I'm not thinking, well, Turkey may be one of those, but very few Muslim countries promote this sort of interfaith understanding. So that was remarkable to me.
Yeah, that's very cool to have that. So, okay. You know what? I'm going to let you lead. Where would you like to take us next? Again, you've been so many places. I don't want to shortchange any place that you really enjoyed, or maybe you didn't even really enjoy it, but you have some really incredible stories from.
You know, one of the things you haven't asked about is the mission trip, and because I have this church background, I've taken people to
Mm-hmm.
countries like the Philippines or Haiti, Peru, and we've gone there with the intent of doing something good for the local population.
Mm-hmm.
Mission trips are and certainly can be problematic, and I discuss that in my book. I realize what's wrong when groups do this. But I think the groups that I was a part of did it better than most.
What's wrong when groups do that?
Well, there's a Western superiority. I
Mm,
mean, the white savior complex.
yeah.
There are a number of different ways of describing this, and there's a lot of truth to them. And the reason I think we avoided that is that we formed partnerships with the local uh, population, either local churches, local university. We did this together with the local population.
Mm-hmm.
And so that makes me feel okay about what we did. So here's an example. I've gone to the Philippines on a Jimmy Carter build. And I forget the year now, but Jimmy and Rosalind Carter went to Dumaguete City in the Philippines, and their goal was to build 250 houses. They brought 1,000 Americans, but there were also 9,000 Filipinos who were working. So it was primarily a Filipino project. And the church I was a part of, we didn't reach 250 houses. So the church I was a part of pledged to go back every year until we reached the goal,
Oh,
250 houses.
that's cool.
And I think we worked closely with the Filipino population. The church I was with it was in a university town. We had access to a dental school, so we built a dental clinic in Dumaguete City, and then the dentists I traveled with tried to talk the local dentists into, well, really into expanding their practice, but to encourage dental hygiene and dental health among the local population. And so reaching out to dentists turned out to be a fascinating part of that trip. Bill, I have to say, I have no building skills whatsoever. Several of these mission trips had a building component,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm useless. I can I can paint, and I think I'm a okay painter. But my role on these trips was to talk to people
Yeah.
and to get to know them, and that perfectly suited me. I heard so many wonderful stories.
Like, do you
Well,
remember
okay,
any of them?
well, I mean, Jimmy Carter just passed away, so this seems like a good time to tell the story. The main street in this new development, the Habitat for Humanity development, the main
Mm-hmm.
street came to be called Jimmy Carter Street. I don't think the government called it that. The local population just called it that in his honor. And I would walk up and down the street because, as I said, I have no skill, no building skills. And people would invite me into their homes. And oh my goodness, the gratitude. It's just hard to describe the feeling in that local population for not only Jimmy and Rosalind Carter, but for the United States, if you can believe it. Just the idea that they had a home to live in because someone took the time, to make this possible for them. It's quite overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I'm sure that rewarding, I guess, is maybe not even the right word, but yeah, very cool. And I think and I didn't touch on the mission trips, not for any reason. I just figured if we get there, we get there, and I really like to let the guest lead because where the stories are that matter the most to you, or have mattered the most to you in your life. So, I'd like to interject with some places if I'm just curious myself.
Okay.
So I do get selfish a little bit sometimes, but yeah, I really just like you to again, where those experiences and stories are, and I don't. So I'm sure that there was a lot more on the mission trips that you've been on that really touched you, or again, funny, scary, anything doesn't matter.
Well, okay, here is the most scary story I tell in the book. I had just led a group. This was really a mission trip since we did some building renovation at that school I mentioned in northern Israel. But on a free day in Jerusalem, my 19-year-old nephew and I rented a car, and the idea was that we were going to drive to Mount Sinai.
Nice.
So, okay. We got a rental car in Jerusalem, and of course, I'm fearless. And we drove to Eilat, which is a Jewish or an Israeli resort town on the Red Sea. We walked across the border. Since you can't take rental cars across, we walked across the border and we hired a Bedouin taxi driver. And the idea is that, this was August, so the idea is that you climb the mountain at night when it's cooler. So it's about midnight. We walk across the border. We look for a Bedouin taxi driver, and we jump in his back seat, and he takes off for Mount Sinai. St. Catherine's Monastery is actually what's there. And what we didn't know was that night, the State Department issued a warning to all American tourists in Israel to stay in their hotels. And why? Because Bill Clinton, who was president at that time, had sent, a couple of dozen cruise missiles into Baghdad in retaliation for an assassination attempt on George H.W. Bush. So we didn't hear that.
Oh, no.
We didn't hear. And so here I am with my 19-year-old nephew driving in an Arab country, and we come upon a military roadblock. And the Egyptian army officer orders the Bedouin taxi driver out. They have a very animated conversation in Arabic, and I'm very worried in the back seat. Finally, the Egyptian army officer comes over to the car. He asks for our passports. He looks at them. It seems like an eternity, and I'm beside myself with anxiety. And I'm thinking, how could I ever go home and face this young man's mother, if I don't bring him with me and alive?
Yeah.
Finally, the Egyptian army officer says, you didn't hear what happened tonight? And we could honestly say no. And then he filled us in. And finally, he threw the passports at us into the back seat and told us to be careful. And our driver jumped back in the taxi and we took off. I think.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness. That was one of the worst moments of my life, to think that this 19-year-old was in my care and we were in grave danger.
Well, especially when you had no idea why this whole situation was happening.
Yeah.
That's talk about going from fearless to very fearful very quickly.
Well, Bill, here's the thing. With all travel, there's a bit of risk taking. And I think I became a little overconfident. I'll just say it. I risk, I thought, I shrugged my shoulders, throw it at me.
Yeah.
Well, this was one night where my risk taking Oh my
Could
goodness,
have been, yeah, yeah.
yeah, it could have been disastrous.
But you did make it to Mount Sinai.
We did. We climbed. We arrived at about 4 o'clock in the morning at the top. It was still dark, so we kind of dozed until sunrise, and then had this remarkable sunrise over the Gulf of Aqaba.
Mm.
There's a tiny Orthodox church. We could smell incense from the church up there.
Oh
Yes,
my God.
just wonderful.
I love moments like that. I love the moments like that you almost can't describe it because it just doesn't do it justice, right?
No, it's hard to describe how beautiful the Sinai Peninsula is, but it's a war-torn area, and I wouldn't advise any tourists to go there right now.
Yeah. But I even mean like just that feeling of being there. You made it. You already had that almost traumatic experience. And then
Yep.
you see the beautiful sunrise and smelling the incense too.
Yep.
That just makes it like I can visualize it myself. And
Yep.
I just feel like that would be, sort of magical. But
Unforgettable. And because we didn't pay the taxi driver until we came down the mountain, he was waiting for us. I forget what
oh
time we
wow.
actually came down the mountain, but he was waiting for us, and he drove us back to Eilat. And oh my goodness, such relief you have never experienced.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure. So, is there more of that mission trip that you'd like to talk about?
No,
A lot of it's in the book, right? I mean, it's all in
yeah,
the book, right? But
I could tell you a little bit about Peru. Uh,
I
uh,
love Peru very much. Where
yeah,
have you
you've been
gone?
there.
Yeah, where have you gone in Peru?
Well, so I spent a couple of summers in the Central Highlands, and then as a bonus, I this is one thing I regret or have questions about. We gave ourselves a present at the end. We climbed Machu Picchu because, of course, we were in Peru. But I wonder if every person who goes on a mission trip has to have a present at the end.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's my. It's kind of a regret. If you're going there to do good work, I don't think you have
Mm-hmm.
to reward yourself at the end.
Yeah. Well, expand on that. I'm a little confused.
So uh, here's a better example. In I used to take high school groups on summer mission trips, and then we'd spend all week, I don't know, painting or building wheelchair ramps and so on. And then on Saturday, before coming home, we would stop at the amusement park. And it was a
Okay.
reward to the high
Okay.
school students.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to think, well, does every week of work have to end with a reward of some kind?
Yeah. Sometimes just the work is the reward because
Yes. Yeah.
what you're doing is so meaningful already, and what you're experiencing is something you can take with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Thank you. That was.
Yeah.
I should
I
have
mean,
had you
I get
help me
it.
with that chapter.
Yeah. I get it. I get it very much. Yeah. I mean, I haven't done work like that anywhere. Not that I would love to. I need to find opportunities to do things like that. But yeah, for me, and not in the same vein, but we've talked about, your dad loved to take a lot of photos, and they weren't necessarily family photos. It was basically photos to capture the memories and the beautiful things that he saw.
Yes.
And I've talked about this in other episodes about, for me, I think it's very important to me to capture places in photographs, but I also draw a line and I put the phone away because that's what I'm using, in my lifetime. It's my phone. But I want to just experience it. And I feel like if I'm so busy trying to find the right photo, I'm not, I'm taking away from my own experience. And so, yeah, when I go to places, I really like to just experience them as much as I can. So,
Well,
like we talked about earlier.
I don't know if the photo is. I mean, I've taken plenty of photos too, but then posting it on social media. So here I am at the Eiffel Tower, and here I am at the Grand Canyon, and
Hmm.
I think that, well, in my opinion, that's not the purpose of travel. But I,
Yeah.
I'm shouting into the wind now.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. So, what else about Peru, please? I love Peru so much.
So I got to know a little bit about the history. I don't know if you remember the Shining Path, a guerrilla movement in the '90s, and they would recruit young men, and they would, I don't know, they were battling the government at the time. But what happened, and then if the young men joined, that great. But sometimes the young men fled to the Amazon River basin. So the children and the women were left. And the churches in Peru tried to set up community centers for the women to provide food and job training and so on. They were really left high and dry, so to speak.
Wow.
So the work we did was with these women whose husbands had fled or had been killed in the Civil War. And I found all of that history to be fascinating. By the time we came, the head of the Shining Path had been captured and the danger had gone away, but the trauma remained. And, in talking with the people in Peru, we heard their history and the trauma they experienced, which was very, very real. So in addition to doing, I hope, good things, we also came to know people and were able to hear them talk about what they had been through.
Yeah. And it's amazing to think and in some ways, that's why I started this podcast, is just the fact that everyone has their own unique experiences and their own travel stories, no matter your walk of life, no matter where you live, how you grew up, no matter what. If you've traveled, you have stories and memories and experiences that I just want to share with the world, because I just don't want them to not go for nothing because they meant something to you as a human being, but just to, let them live on, I guess, is kind of why I did it. But remembering that wherever we go, they're also just human beings. Their environment's different. They've grown up in a different way, and maybe their economy is different or whatever. But everyone's still, for the most part, I believe, they love their family. They need to provide. Most human beings enjoy interaction. We're so much more the same than we are different, no matter what.
Well, here's my best story about this. Each time I went to Peru, we were there over Independence Day. So kind of like July 4 in this country, I guess. And we watched the parade go by. And then I said to the person next to me, who was a Peruvian, I said, "Oh, these people love their country." And the Peruvian thought for a second and said, "They don't love their government, but they do love their country."
Okay. Yeah.
And
okay.
I thought, all right, I think I understand that. I mean, that makes sense to me. That they were honoring something that day, and it wasn't
wasn't the government, but
no.
Yeah, I get it, and that brought them together, and so that's a beautiful thing as well.
Yeah. It was helpful to see what patriotism looked like in another environment, and I think I learned something that day.
Yeah. Has there been places that you've been to where you've made such incredible connections with a local that maybe even to this day you still have some form of communication with them, or would, if maybe you met them before, internet and cell phones and whatnot, but kind of miss and wish you could catch up with someone?
Well, as I mentioned, I spent 5 years in Zurich and got to know people there very, very well. And one of my friends there passed away in March. And I knew that he had been sick for a while, but his family requested that I come for the memorial service. And so, this was an example of a family I came to know very, very well. And so so it's been, I don't know, at least 3 years since I'd been there. I returned to participate in the memorial service, to sit with the family. The man who died is a Swiss native, but he had married a Thai woman. This is going to, I guess, there's a funny story connected to this. In Switzerland, the people don't like Germans very much. I assume there are historical reasons for that. And the man who died had a very strong-willed mother, and his mother said, "You may not marry a German or a Catholic." So my friend Jörg worked in a bank in the U.S. and he met a Thai woman, and they fell in love, et cetera, et cetera. So he goes home and he says to his mother, "Well, no Germans and no Catholics, but how about a Thai Buddhist?" And he loved telling that story. I didn't dare tell it at the funeral service, but his wife, who was there, loves the story too. She converted later to the Christian faith, but he would tell that story about his mom and then just roar with laughter. He married a Thai woman who grew up Buddhist.
Oh my gosh. And how touching to know that you had that much of an impact on someone's life from, yes, you were there for some time, but to be, cared for enough to be invited for something so important as that.
Yeah.
And that's, well, and it doesn't happen if we don't get out and, and get into the world. So I love stories like that. Do you have others that you still talk to this day or anything like that, or maybe you meet up with if you go back to a place like, hey, let's catch up because I haven't seen you in years?
Yeah. I mean, the short answer is many.
I had a feeling, but I wasn't sure.
And so just being back, it was a long weekend, and I would never advise, this is my travel advice for today. I would never advise going to Europe and staying for 3 nights and then coming home. That's just not a good way to do it.
Such a waste.
Yeah. But there were so many big emotions. I knew these people. I hiked with them. I spent so much time with them, and then to go back and see them again. Yeah, I mean, it was wonderful and difficult at the same time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, take us some more places, Doug, before we're creeping up on the hour mark, although I can't believe it. I feel like it's gone very quickly. But tell me some other, anywhere in the world, anything that you've experienced that was just really awesome. And again, I like the scary, I like the funny, I like all of it, but it's not about me. It's not about me. It's about you. So.
Well, okay. We can't end without me saying that at a certain point in my life, I decided I didn't want to lead groups of people anymore, no matter whether it was a mission trip or pilgrimage.
It's time exhausting for you to just experience it on your own.
Right. So soon after I retired, I walked the Camino de Santiago in northern Spain. I walked the most popular route. It's 500 miles. There are other routes. I walked the Portuguese route last October. But anyway, wow. I wanted to go by myself, not to have people to care for, because as I said, it's hard work. People get sick. There's there are a lot of logistics to pay attention to.
Well, it's not only that though, right? But there's so much personal meaning when you're doing something like that, right? Like so much of it that you're discovering of yourself. And so I feel like it would be hard to be split like that and be focused on your own journey, but also making sure everyone else was okay. So I think that was a good decision.
Yeah. And I have to say, the best part of that Camino experience across northern Spain was meeting people from all over the world. There were 1 or 2 Americans, far fewer than I expected, but there were people from just about every continent. And so the rich part of that experience for me was meeting them, getting to know them, having, we walked all day, every day. And then when we got to where we were going to stay, then we just sat around and talked some more. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of conversation, and I heard some wonderful stories, which I still appreciate today. Can I give you one example?
You can give me as many of them as you'd like, please. I love this.
So I met a man from Chile, South America, who was a Jesuit priest, and he and I walked together for about 3 days, so I got to know him pretty well. And he had founded a seminary in Russia, of all places. That blew my mind. He was a native Spanish speaker, spoke excellent English and French. And then in order to do this work in Russia, he had to learn the Russian language. So it boggles my mind. The language learning boggles my mind. So here was what I learned. When he got his PhD, his superior ordered him to go to Russia. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. You didn't have anything. This was not a negotiation. And he said, Doug, I took vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. So when your superior says go, you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I had to explain to him that Presbyterians, they apply for positions and they have interviews, and it's kind of a mutual decision. And he thought that was hysterical. He had never, I don't think he respected my tradition very much.
Oh,
Anyway,
jeez.
meeting Sebastian, I have to say, was one of the high points of that 28-day walk.
And when you go your separate ways, why does that happen? Because your ultimate goal is the same, right? You're going to the same place. Is it just
yeah,
a speed thing, an endurance thing, or?
No. I mean, if you've ever watched movies about this or films, Camino families form. So it's not unusual for people to meet other walkers and then just to stay together. In the case of Sebastian, he came across a Jesuit. It wasn't a monastery, but it was a I'm not even sure what to call it. He came upon a gathering of Jesuits, and he said, "I'm going to peel off here and spend a few nights with them." And so we said our goodbyes.
Oh, very, very cool. That's very. I was hoping you wouldn't say something about, he wasn't feeling well or something bad or whatever.
No.
But no, I get that. So,
well, there were injuries along the way. People do get blisters, and bad things do happen.
what else? What else on that journey? What else can you tell us about that journey?
Well, I'll tell you one more story about that. I met a young woman from Estonia. So maybe a former Soviet Socialist Republic. I'm not sure, but she had cerebral palsy. I'm not a physician, but when I saw her walk, it was clear that this is what she was up against. I mean, I'm a fully abled adult male. I mean, the 500-mile journey was a challenge, yes, but I did it. Here's a young woman with cerebral palsy, and I could see her in the evenings at the Pilgrim Hostel doing stretching exercises. And I thought, oh my goodness, I mean, imagine the challenge of this walk for her. So I'm not proud of this, but my mind immediately goes to pity. And as I say, not proud. I'm almost ashamed to admit that.
It's natural, though, I think.
Yeah. So I asked her while we're walking. I said, "Hey, what do you do back home? What's your work?" And she said, "I own an accounting firm."
Mm.
And then suddenly, pity changed to, "Oh my goodness, I'm in the presence of a really remarkable person,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody I'd like to get to know and talk to." So we did. We spent several days walking together and exchanging stories. I think that was one of the most remarkable encounters I've ever had.
Would you say, as most have, that journey itself was also one of your life-changing experiences?
Yeah, without a doubt. If you read the book, my wife is sick of hearing this story, but I'm going to tell you anyway.
Well, she's not here.
She may well be listening in the other room. Uh, so I seldom, I'm not sure that this is the right way to put it, but I seldom back down from a challenge. I'll hear about a challenging thing like walking the Camino, and I'll think, okay, I can do that. Nope, yep, I'll do it. Well, the very first night, I was walking from the French side of the Pyrenees to the top of the Pyrenees. Really, it was the first day's walk was 16 miles, and the elevation change was almost 5,000 feet.
Doug,
And
can I
yeah,
interrupt you real quick?
yeah.
Some of our listeners may not know what the significance is of this walk.
Oh,
Could you sort of describe it real quick before we go back into this story?
yeah.
Because it's, I mean, what, thousands and thousands of people do this every year.
Yep.
And there's a reason.
So 1,000 years ago, supposedly the bones of the Apostle James were found in northwest Spain, in the town of Santiago de Compostela. And today there are several pilgrimage walks all leading to the same destination. Now, for me, I don't care about the bones of St. James, and I don't think many of the people who walked with me did, but the idea is to walk where hundreds of thousands of pilgrims over the centuries have walked and to have that same experience. I mean, that is the appeal of the Camino pilgrimage.
Yeah. And even if you're not necessarily a spiritual person,
Right.
I feel like for most people, it becomes a spiritual adventure and journey in some way.
Bill, everybody I met, and maybe it was because I'm a Presbyterian pastor, but everybody I met said, "Oh, I'm not religious. This is not some sort of Catholic thing for me." I mean, they felt compelled to say that they weren't religious, and yet they treated. I mean, this is what was fascinating to me. They treated it like a spiritual experience every day, and personally, I love that.
Yeah. So I'm so sorry. I just wanted to make sure, and I figured you would tell it better than I would. So you're on your journey. You started in. Go ahead.
Well, the French village of Saint Jean Pied de Port. That's where traditionally anyway the pilgrimage begins, and I didn't make it. There are lots of factors. I was dehydrated, jet lagged, et cetera, et cetera. And
did you start too soon? Should you have waited a day or two?
Yeah, I should have gone window shopping for a day, but that's not who I am. And I got myself in trouble. I was 3 or 4 miles from the monastery where I'd planned to spend the night, and I was spent. I had absolutely nothing left. And the sun is going down. I'm utterly alone. I didn't know how many predators were in the forest. It turns out, well, if there were, they weren't interested in me. But I rolled out my sleeping bag next to the path and spent the night under the stars. Now, I hate camping. That was part of it. I had no food, which turned out to be good because then predators would not be as interested in me. But so that first night, I had the experience that I needed to have spiritually speaking. I came face to face with who I am as a human being, and the reflection in the mirror was not pretty.
Wow.
There are things I can't do. And just because I will them to happen, I can't do them all. And I spent the next 27 days then reflecting on what that meant. And it was one of the hardest interior monologues I've ever had.
Would you say humbled?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm not. I mean, I'm telling the story in a funny way, but there was nothing. Yeah, I'm not proud of any part of it.
Yeah. It's so incredible. Anything else along the way before? Because I want to know what the feeling was like when you actually reached the end.
So I got to the Santiago de Compostela, and there's a big cathedral that was built where the bones of St. James were discovered. And I have my hiking poles in the air, and I look like I've just climbed Mount Everest. And somebody took my phone and, took my photo, and I have it. Actually, I have the phone behind. I have this photo behind me. I look like I just accomplished something great with my life. And then a few minutes later, I go to Pilgrim Mass in the cathedral with 500 other pilgrims. And it's at that moment I realize the spiritual significance of what I had done. It wasn't the achievement. It was that I had done something that hundreds of thousands of other like-minded people had done over the centuries. And that was a very emotional moment for me.
Yeah. Were there tears?
I'm a crybaby anyway, but yes. Yeah. So, yep.
It's okay to admit that, Yeah. I mean, it's such an incredible thing. I don't know that I could do it. Would I try? I might someday.
Bill, I hope you do it.
I like to hike, I guess, as long as it's not too treacherous. I just the like you said, the camping part of it is not a thing for me. I don't know what I would do in that moment where you were spent and you
Yeah.
just had no choice but to throw out that sleeping bag and lie down. I don't know if I could do that.
So
But you
here,
learned something about yourself, right? I mean,
yeah, here's what I learned. Last October, I walked the Portuguese version of this, and I hired a travel company, and they carried my bag ahead every night. I didn't have this 20-pound pack on my
so
back.
you learned to make it a little bit easier.
Yeah, and I didn't feel guilty about didn't feel guilty about doing that. And I also said, "Are you going to know if I don't make it? Are you going to come looking for me?" And they assured me that yes, they would. So I did learn a couple of lessons.
Yes. So wonderful. That whole section of this podcast might go down as one of my favorite. Like just this that whole thing. I mean, there's so many parts of it that are just so incredible. I love that so much. So
Well,
is there anything else you can think of? Like we're getting sort of close to where we should probably jump into the 5 questions at some point, which is what I always end with. But I don't want to miss out on some other adventures that you've had. And I know you have plenty more. What else do you have anywhere else we can go maybe a little lighter or
yeah.
whatever? Beautiful moments, funny moments. Again, I know it's tough because I feel like a lot of times when I'm doing this, I'm putting people on the spot because your mind is racing, you're jumping around, but anywhere in the world that as we're talking about these things that you just thought of something that you can tell us.
Well, Bill, you are so comfortable to talk with, so this is not difficult at all. I'll tell one more story from last October. I met a mother daughter combination. They were walking the Portuguese Camino together, and they had the ashes of husband and father. So this is not a light or humorous story at all, but their plan was to scatter the ashes of husband and father along the way as they walked toward Santiago de Compostela.
Do you know why? Why was that important?
It, yeah, I mean that's a wonderful question. They were not going to inter the ashes anywhere. They had no cemetery in mind. They thought the way to honor husband and father was to leave him along this ancient path.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and I never saw the actual scattering. They were very private about that, but most evenings I caught up with them and we had dinner together. I was very moved by how deliberate they were in honoring this important person in their lives. And anyway, I just felt it was a privilege to get to know them. From Australia, by the way.
Yeah. Have you been to Australia?
I'm embarrassed to say no. I mean, and I don't like bucket lists, but if I had a bucket list, Australia would be on it.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
You too?
Me too.
Have you been to Australia?
No, no, I haven't, but I've heard some wonderful stories, and my daughter has been, and she told me some really beautiful stories about being there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where else? There's got to be something else. You've almost brought tears to my eyes with that last one, so I need something uplifting.
Well, I have acquaintances. I mean, friendships I've made over the years in Australia, and so I want to go. And one of them is a seminary
Mm-hmm.
classmate, and he has spent his entire career even though he's an American, he spent his entire career in Tasmania, which is an island off the southern coast of Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'm curious to see Australia, but I would like nothing more than to see the country through his eyes. I would love it if he showed me his work setting and why he has spent, now closing in on 50 years in this place that was not his home. I just think that would be a remarkable adventure to have.
Would you at some point settle down somewhere else in the world, or is
Oh,
Michigan home now?
the honest answer to that is I would, at this point in my life, I would go where my daughters are. My daughters live too far away. One in Minneapolis and the other in Seattle. So if I go anywhere, it's going to be to one of those places.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I'm actually of the opposite mindset. My children are all grown up, and they're a little bit more spread out, I guess, because although 3 of them are right here near me, one of them is in New Zealand. So I'm kind of at a point where I will settle wherever I decide to settle, and they can come to me.
Oh my
Give
goodness!
them a reason to travel, and maybe I don't settle somewhere for any, for eternity, and maybe I settle somewhere for some years, and then I go somewhere else and settle for some years. But yeah, well, so go ahead.
Yeah, I hope you get there. I mean, that would be enough of a reason for me to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to be respectful of you, and I want to say if there's anything else before I get into the 5 questions, and I mean this wholeheartedly. I'm in no hurry, but this is generally where we start to wrap things up. But I've had episodes go an hour and 45 minutes. So, if there's anything else that just popped into your head or anything else that you're thinking of that I just, you really just want to tell this experience or this story of anywhere in the world that you've been, please, by all means, it's up to you.
Yeah, thank you for that opportunity. You're such a good listener, and I'm usually, my training is to be the listener, but no, you're a very good listener. No, I can't think of anything.
You're flattering me very much. We might have to do this again sometime. So, okay, well, let's jump into the 5 questions. And again, if something that I talk about or we talk about during this, and it happens, something triggers in your mind, a new memory or something else that you want to talk about, there's no strict format with this, okay?
Okay, all right.
Question number 1, and we did not talk about food, I don't think, at all.
Interesting.
So question number 1 is, of all of the meals you've ever had in your entire life, anywhere in the world, outside of your own home, what is the most memorable meal experience? And I'm very careful to use that word experience that you've ever had.
Okay, but the first thought is Italy, but I need to be careful in answering this. Morocco has a fascinating cuisine, but maybe I'm thinking about that because that's the most recent place I visited. The tagines, the hot dishes, the meat stews. I mean, they're just wonderful. But Italy, my goodness, I think
give me one in particular, though. Don't be vague, Doug.
Oh.
Give me a specific place and experience that you had that was just, and maybe it was the ambiance, maybe it was the people that you were with, maybe it was not completely about the food, but the food was great.
Oh my goodness. Well, okay. There was one lunchtime on the Cinque Terre, the north west part of Italy. I can't even. I think it didn't matter so much what we ate, but it was sitting outside looking at the water. I think that was the most unforgettable lunch I've ever had. And
what did you have? Do you remember?
It was probably chicken, but it didn't.
That's incredible, though. No, listen, that's the first time I've had someone that told me that their most incredible meal was not necessarily, it wasn't about the food.
No.
And I love it.
I was with my daughters and my wife, and I was sitting on Cinque Terre looking at the Mediterranean, and I thought, I'm in heaven.
I love that so much. That's probably my favorite answer.
Okay.
That's probably my favorite answer. Thank you so much for that.
Chicken. Okay. It was chicken.
It was chicken. Some kind of chicken in Italy. Very nice. And you know what? And you're not the first person that's mentioned Cinque Terre, which I've never been to that part of Italy, but I will add it. And Italy is one of the few countries that I've been to that I absolutely have to go back to because it's so vast and the different regions are so different. And you know what? It's not unlike the United States in a way, right? I've talked about this in other episodes as well. We overlook how how vast and how different and how unique different states and different areas of the United States are. And I think when what first pops into our head about travel is, where have I been overseas or outside of the country? And the United States has so much to offer.
Yeah. Agreed.
But anyway, so I digress. Question number 2 is, of all of the places, this might be my favorite question, of all of the places in the world that you have been, if I offered you a free trip, Doug, go, all expenses, you say no. I'm good. I don't want to go back.
What's the question? Under what circumstances would I say no?
Where would you not go back? And it could and it could be, I've experienced it already and I'm good. I don't need more experience in that place.
So for my wife, this would be easy. She says Europe holds little appeal for her right now. We've driven all over the continent.
I've lost a tiny bit of respect for your wife, but we won't talk about that. I'm just kidding.
But I can't. No, there is no place.
Okay. Because every time you go, it can be different, right?
Yes.
I mean, and you can go to a different part, and you can meet people that you didn't meet before, and right? I mean, I get it.
Exactly. And okay. I could give you some examples there, but things change.
Go for it, please.
Well, the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul was built as a Christian church, an Orthodox church, and then it became a Muslim worship space. Then it was converted to a museum, and today I think it's a Muslim worship space again. These places that we visit change over time. And in some ways, you can't go back and experience the same thing over again.
It goes both ways, doesn't it? You can go back to a place that you've been because you want the same experience or a similar experience, and then you go and it's not the same.
Oh, because
it's a bad thing. You've changed, it's changed, and you're disappointed because it's not the same.
Yeah. Good point.
It can flip completely, and you could have a terrible experience somewhere and have it be beautiful the next time. So yeah, wonderful. Okay. So flipping that question 3 is, of all of the places in the world that you have been, where do you absolutely have to go again?
I have to go where the relationships were rich and strong and life-giving. And so those would be the congregations I served, one in Zurich and the other in The Hague. So I went back to Zurich and I had a wonderful time there in spite of the fact that I went for a memorial service. But I would love to see my friends in The Hague again. There was so much love that was experienced there. And I would just love to give everybody a hug again. That's my dream.
I love that your answers are not necessarily about the destination itself, that it's about the people and the bonds that you formed. That's wonderful.
Good point.
So question 4 is, of all of the places in the world that you haven't been, and you mentioned bucket list earlier, and I'm not talking about bucket list. Bucket lists are long. Where do you absolutely have to go?
We talked about Australia, and I would have to put that at number 1 on your list, or the list you've described. I know people there. I met them at various points in my life, and they live in different places in Australia. So I would plan the travel around visits with them so I could see the country through their eyes.
Yeah. Unlike Morocco, Australia is very large. So you'll have some time. Or you'll have to spend some time, I guess. That's what I'd like to say. Final question is very easy because you know the answer. Where are you going? What do you have lined up?
So how do you know that I know the answer?
Well, you would know if you have an answer, I guess.
Okay, Bill, my last book just came out a little less than 3 months ago, and I'm busy doing podcasts and going around speaking about the book. But in the back of my mind, I have the next book percolating. And I have applied now to one, and I will soon have applied to two writers' residencies. I'm hoping to go to Scotland for a month to work on this new project. And my second choice, I'm probably, I'm sabotaging my chances of getting in by saying it's choice number two. But there's another one in Switzerland, in a part of Switzerland I did not live in. This would be the French-speaking part. These would be great 1 month writing experiences. So that's the next one.
So nothing imminently planned. It's sort of based on what happens with this.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Well, as you know, part of the fun of travel is the anticipation. So lots of anticipation right now.
That you're right. Absolutely. That's one of the greatest parts of it. And it's like, I just want to get there wherever it is. I want to get there. Yeah. Because I want more experiences. So did anything pop into your mind while we were talking that you want to talk about? I just want to be respectful again.
Yeah, I'm amazed that we had so much to talk about. You're a good listener, and thank you for listening to all of my stories. I appreciate that very much.
It's what I do.
Yeah.
If I didn't, I wouldn't have a podcast. But you're a fantastic guest, and honestly, I mean, you touched me in so many ways. You made me laugh. You almost made me cry. And I felt for your life for a brief moment, or your nephew's life for a brief moment. And so I felt all the emotions in this last hour, almost hour and a half that we had together. This was really wonderful. Anything you'd like to say before we wrap?
No, just a big thank you. I very much appreciated this conversation, and it's good to get to know a kindred spirit, at least as far as travel is concerned.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, and best of luck with everything. And I'm going to check out the book, and I'm going to advertise the book as we get closer to release of the episode. And we're going to hopefully remain friends beyond this, and hang out with me after we're done with this when I hit stop. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you so much, Doug. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you, Bill.
And there's another episode of the Where Have You Been podcast in the books. Thank you so much for listening today. It was another great guest with some great stories, as always, and I hope that you will support all of the guests by checking out the show notes and going to their web pages, seeing any socials and projects that they may have going on. And please, again, I'll ask as always to like, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It really does help to allow the podcast to grow and reach more people, and I appreciate you for doing that. Also, if you haven't done so, check out the website, whybpodcast.com, where you can find blog posts. If you'd like to be a guest, please register to be a guest on the site, and check out the merch page. There's some really cool stuff if you're interested in representing the pod, along with some other cool travel items and apparel that I'm working on every day as well. Join me again next week for another great guest with more incredible stories. New episodes drop every Sunday just after midnight Eastern Time. Until then, thank you for being here, and have a great day.